welcome to Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football. Thanks for joining us. I am Desmond, one of our post-game hosts, as well as one of the weekly contributors here on Wednesdays. We are here 5:30 to 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. Also have Mark Rogers with us as well. If you are here, you know who Mark Rogers is. While you're here, please like and subscribe. Share the video out to social media. We greatly appreciate it. Definitely helps the channel. And also, go to Mark's main channel, The Voice of College Football, which I just saw cross 34,000 subscribers. So congrats to Mark. And yeah, feel free to join his Discord, and you can also contribute to the show. We've got links in the description with PayPal, Cash App, all that good stuff. So thank you for joining us. And Mark, how are we doing today?
I'm good. That usually starts with assessing the weather. So yeah, blue skies, and it's not like 75 or 80 degrees out, but it's better than it's been the last few days. So man, we had a stretch of I'm talking about basically a week of anywhere from like 68 to 80 here with blue skies, not a cloud in the sky for like 5-6 straight days. And then over the weekend, it just got, it was like summer was over and it was like kicking back into another winter or something. It was like, oh man, this is miserable. But now the last couple of days, at least it's not gotten a lot warmer, but it's 52, 53, something in that range. And at least it's sunny. So.
Well, that's good. We're surviving today in Michigan. I think we peaked around 50 today. I think maybe 52, but it was for a very short amount of time, and then it just started going back down. So I think we're probably mid to low 40s right now. So not terrible. There's no snow on the ground, so I'll take that. I take the small wins and go from there. So. It could always be worse. That's what I say. That's what I say.
Yeah, when you grow up in the north, and I lived in Mississippi for 6 years. I've spent quite a bit of time in the South, but it's just funny talking to people in the South because I'll mention that if you don't mention that it's warmer than like 70 or 75 degrees, then they're thinking, well, that's not spring weather. What are you talking about? You're still in the winter.
It's funny. I went to visit my dad a couple weeks back, and he lives in Huntsville, Alabama. And there was one time we got lunch, and my daughter was there, and he was heading back to work, and we were just out in the parking lot chatting before he left, and like he's wearing, a suit. He's got a shirt on under it, and he's like kind of has the hands in the pockets, like kind of like chilly a little bit. And I was like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, it's cold out here." It was like 65. Like myself and my daughter were loving it. I'm like, this is great, loving it. And he's chilly. He's like, "Oh yeah, no, I need it to be 75, 80. This is a little rough." And I'm like, okay, if you say so, but. Yes, it's very different. What you're used to and what what's warm to you and what's not warm. So it's it's everything is relative. Everything's relative.
Yes, it is. And I would like relative to be what your dad's experiencing. That's what I would like that relative to turn into.
Yes. I would like that as well. I'd like that as well. So the first thing I wanted to get to, and I know we've got Mark for a certain amount of time, so your answer to this question will be pretty big. I'm interested to hear your take on it. So obviously we last week kind of talked about the unfortunate passing of Dwayne Haskins, and Dre kind of talked about his memory of Haskins, of just the guy who just providing headaches as a rival. And I am curious, is for most people probably know, but some may not, that you're an Ohio State fan. But I'm curious to know, who was the Michigan player that just kind of gave you headaches, whether it was coming up to the game, whether it was just the result of it. But I'm curious your take on who is that guy where it just was a headache and kind of that similar memory from Haskins.
Yeah, I think that Ohio State and Michigan fans that enjoy the rivalry, or I should say, I don't know if enjoy is the right word, depending on your perspective and what year it is, but you know what I mean. You're Alabama Auburn, so you can relate that it's the game of the year, regardless of the records. That it all depends on when you grow up. So it was a very much a back and forth when I was young, and then Michigan went on a really good run for 12 or 13 years while John Cooper was there. So made life miserable on Ohio State teams that were gearing up for a national championship. They were one win away. Boom, they're playing in the Rose Bowl, and they're playing, as a number 1 or 2 team in the country, and boom, Michigan ends that. So as soon as you went to a rival headache, the first name that came to mind was Desmond Howard.
Okay.
So, and just because the story attached to that was I had just moved away from home. It was my first real job out of college. And these people that I worked with didn't realize how serious of an Ohio State fan. They knew it. I'd worked there for a couple months, so they'd seen me through the football season. So they knew I was serious, but they thought that they could call me and prank me and joke with me during the game. And this was the Desmond Howard Heisman pose game, and Ohio State didn't have a chance. They got killed 31-3 in that game. But it's 7-zip. I get a phone call, and they're hey, how's the game going? They knew exactly how the game was going, and I was somewhat courteous the first phone call. The second phone call, I'm pissed off, shut it, at 14-0, and then the third phone call was just just ripped them to shreds and slammed the phone down.
Oh. I could imagine. I can imagine. I'm someone that you can text me during the games, but yeah, phone calls and things like that.
This was
No,
before texting. This is
'cause
1991.
yeah, I need to hone in on the game. I can't. No, I've gotta hone in. I've got to focus on it. Um, I would say, and I'm not a Michigan fan, but in just obviously watching the rivalry, mine would be it would be a little odd, but I think it would make sense. Mine would actually be Ted Ginn Jr. for Ohio State, and when I really think about it and go back to his games against Michigan, I'm not sure I could look at it and say that he had any monster games, and I would have to actually go and check, but I just remember just so much talk of just when Ginn's got the ball, just the announcers, everything. I remember Braylon Edwards senior year, they talked about having him as a gunner on one of the gunners on the punt team, to have someone that was just speedy, and this was obviously peak Braylon, I think his senior year, just to make sure that they don't let Ginn get loose, and I'm sure I think he did have a couple touchdowns and things like that. He just was that dangerous guy where you just no matter if he did have monster games or not, he just drew so much attention, and you just couldn't play your normal defense. You couldn't just have your normal, punt team and kick return team out there. You had to have a lot of practice time. Your scheme had to be right. It probably changed when you played Ohio State with Ginn back there, and he was just. I mean, I don't remember seeing a guy in college football that fast. I know Reggie Bush was pretty fast, pretty explosive, but I still don't think Reggie Bush was even as fast as Ginn was, and he could just turn it on so quick. He was the one that I would have to think about with the rivalry. He just changed things so much because of just he was just absolutely electric.
Yeah, there's certain great players that they look like everybody else. They're just great and they're just very productive and good at what they do. Like I never thought that Jerry Rice looked different than anyone else. He was just more productive. He was obviously the greatest of all time statistically, but he didn't look different than other. And I don't think most great players look different, but Ginn looked different out there. Tyreek Hill looks different than everybody else out there. There's very few guys like that. But the first time I saw Ted Ginn, I don't remember what game it was, but when I first saw him get the ball and just see him like turn the corner, and he had a very distinct running style with his long legs that it was just crazy to see. Okay, guys can't figure the angle on him. They're missing it. They don't realize he's that fast. And once he turns that corner, wow, he just blows by guys that are really fast. He runs right by them like they're standing still. It was crazy.
Yeah, he was a different level because, like you said, he looked different, and I would even say for as productive and as great as the Olave and Garrett Wilson are, like you could tell they are great route runners. You could tell that they are fast, but it doesn't look like that. It was very different. And even I believe Smith and Jigba, I don't think he is that. I think he's a fast receiver, but the same thing. He just looks productive. You can tell he's going to be a really good receiver. But yeah, it didn't look like that with Ted Ginn. That was just a whole nother level. So yeah, I thought that was something interesting to touch on. So the NFL draft is coming up, and we have got. I think it's pretty clear. I think we can bet that Aiden Hutchinson is looking like he's going to be the number one pick in the draft, and I'm curious to get your quick answer, Mark. Is what type of impact do you think that's going to happen or have with Michigan football, if any? With just recruiting, just the program itself, just having him be the number one pick and be pretty clear cut as well. I mean, at this point, there's very little talk of anything different.
Yeah, I think these players more now than ever have an eye to the NFL, and they want to know that they're going somewhere that's going to produce that. And if you could be in a group of 5 school and reach the NFL, of course, but you want to know that you've got a shot to be a high pick. And Georgia's going to flood the draft. Alabama always floods the draft, but Georgia's run's going to be pretty ridiculous. It might. I looked this up the other day because it was a discussion we had. Ohio State had the record in '04, I believe, was the draft. They had 14 players drafted, and then they tied that again, and then LSU tied. So 2 Ohio State teams and LSU after that 2019 had 14 players drafted. Anyway, just repeatedly having the Michigan name called, especially near the top of the draft, because as you well know, a lot of people like I'll watch the 6th or 7th round just as enthusiastically as I'll watch the first round. It's all interesting to me. In a sense, it's more interesting to me because I know the first 5 or 10 picks are roughly going to be this. So you got to be like a draft nerd to like the end of the draft, but everybody's watching the first round. So that has to have a pretty big impact, I would think, on guys, knowing that, hey, this is a place that produced a top pick in the draft or a top 5 pick in the draft.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the part that's important is stringing along the successes that you have. So you had the really great regular season. You beat Ohio State, you beat your rival, you win the Big Ten championship in, I mean, very convincing fashion, and you make it to the college football playoff. And then also now you pair that with, hey, I've got a defensive end who's going number one. Also, even a guy who unfortunately tore his Achilles in the pre-draft workouts is probably still going to go first round. And you have guys who are going to be in the late first, early second round draft picks, that you're starting to put things together where it's like, man, we're having a lot of success. And then also you couple it with, like you mentioned, Mark, of guys being able to get to the NFL. I mean, that's how you start to build, an elite program, not just a really good program, but when you're trying to take that next step, that next level, you can go to the top tier 5-star kid and say, listen, here's what we did with, Aiden Hutchinson. Here's what we did with Ojabo. Here's what we did with Dax Hill. And then you look at the Big Ten championship. You look at, hey, we were in the college football playoff. There was 4 teams. We were one of them. We had a one-loss regular season. So you start to really put those things together, and you can tell a really great story versus last year before you had that type of success. It's really difficult to sell a dream and to have a pitch when you don't, when the trophy case is essentially empty. So and that's one thing my partner Dre talks about a lot before of this year was, you can't, if you're going head to head as a Michigan coach against a kid who's considering Ohio State. He's like, you don't have, you can't show him a trophy case. You can't show him, a Big Ten championship ring. Like you don't have those things. He's like, and they've got a national championship within the last 10 years. So it definitely makes a difference. But now, it's, of course, things don't reset and it's not a refresh. But, when you just go back 12 months from now, and you can, start to look at the success that Michigan has had, you do get to start to tell a story about, hey, here's what we did. And guess what? You come here, you're going to be part of the next Big Ten championship. And you're that missing piece of us getting to, winning a playoff game, becoming a national champion. That's a story to tell is, hey, look, we're close. You could be that piece to push us over the top.
Yeah, it's proof of concept. So most college football coaches are out there. Yeah, they're selling a vision, they're selling a concept, they're selling a relationship, they're selling a lot of different things, but they can't point to the trophy case, whether that be a national championship or a conference championship. So there's very few that can say, there's the evidence that we can achieve it here. So we achieved this level. Talking about Michigan, you can help us get to the ultimate, and also back to the NFL draft. I know a couple of years ago, Ohio State had 10 drafted, Michigan had 10 drafted, but I think it was very conclusive. It was very telling that Ohio State's 10 were drafted, like 3 in the first round, all 10 in the first 3 rounds. Michigan's was really concentrated at the back end of the draft, 5th, 6th rounders. And, there can be really productive, great college players that get drafted late because they just don't have the measurables. And there are obviously projects that just because they're freak athletes, an NFL team will take a shot at them. But in whole, you're talking about 20 players. I think that was very telling that this is the difference in these two programs as it stands right now. They both produce 10 NFL draft picks, but the quality of those picks is very different.
Yeah. And that also plays into it as well, to have, guys that are front loaded versus your guys that get drafted are, essentially on the back end. So it'll be interesting. I think Michigan has been on a heck of a run. I think being able to kind of continue that success of, great regular season, you beat Ohio State, Big Ten championship, get to the playoff. Now you've got some work to do, but had a solid spring, and you're looking at, going into fall camp, and also too, potentially we've talked about it before, but the kind of the second wave of the transfer portal. Now, Michigan hasn't been, in the recent time, it's been around huge in the transfer portal, but the couple guys that they did get, I think, will be pretty impactful as far as, bringing them into the program. So we'll see how that goes. But I think they're on a good path right now, and you just got to continue to build on it. So we'll kind of see how that continues, and and hopefully they can keep that rolling.
Yeah. And certainly, as we take everybody through the next few months talking Michigan football, we understand now that we've made it through the spring session, there could be some movement. There will be with a lot of teams, most teams across the nation, a lot of movement in and out of the transfer portal. Maybe less with Michigan than most teams, but we'll be on top of that as well. But this comes the time to become a producer and figure out what are we going to talk about for the next 3 or 4 months. Well, so I'll be sending Des a list of okay, these are all these little evergreen items and topics and fun debates that we can get into and attach Michigan to it.
For sure. Yeah, there's always something to talk about, and it may not be as huge or big as people want it to be, but there's always something. And the good thing with us having the live shows is we get questions that kind of come through as well that we can kind of talk about and bring up as well. So there's always something to talk about. But yes, Mark, you definitely have the tough job in the when it comes to the the spring and rolling into the summer where you're not seeing guys running around and all that good stuff. But you're a professional and you I'm have confidence.
We figure it out some way.
Most definitely.
So we did do coaches rankings both in the Big Ten and nationally. And I believe I posted. No, you know what? I didn't post it here on the Michigan channel, but we'll have to bring those up in the future and see if people agree with me on where we placed Coach Harbaugh.
Oh, I was watching that because you did that on the main channel. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I was watching for a bit and I can't remember. I think it pretty much worked out how I thought it would. If I remember correctly, there weren't any major shakeups. Or no, you know what it was? I saw the SEC coaches that you did, and I think Kirby Smart was two, and Saban was one. And in like you had mentioned, I think whoever the third coach was, because you went from bottom to the top, you got to number two, and you're just like that. There's no surprise here. I think everybody is aware. Kirby Smart, yeah, he obviously just won the national championship, but not quite gotten to where Nick Saban is. But he's still a really young coach when you compare him to Nick Saban.
Yeah.
So you never know. I think will be difficult being in the SEC, but you just never know.
Well, I know why I didn't post the Big Ten coaches here to the Michigan channel was I released the Pac-12, the Big 12, and the ACC. I just did videos, and then I thought, I'm getting a lot of comments. There's a lot of debate in there. Let's do some live streams and take calls, and I'll do the SEC and the Big Ten because those will most likely be the conferences that most people are adamant about. And man, people just kept the conversation going forever, and we're just calling, and we're doing like 3.5 hour live streams of people. I just got to tell them stop calling, but people are, they're fired up about that. And then I unveiled the whole national list of all the Power Fives 1 through 65, and it was just too large of a file to download for me to edit to cut out the Big Ten part to post it here. Is what it turned out to be. So, but it was fun getting everybody's perspective on that. And of course, you can't win,
Of course,
that the any kind of rankings.
Yeah. Well, and I think about as we went through the season this past year of just the different team channels we would hop onto. Like I remember hopping on with Greg from the Nebraska channel, and I'm sure Nebraska fans probably think Scott Frost is too low and. But the interesting part
lower, I'll tell you that. He's at the bottom.
The craziest part was I remember, Greg being on the channel and he's just like, man, he's like, I really think Nebraska's going to keep it close against Michigan. And I thought he was crazy. I'm like, Greg, like, have you watched Nebraska? Like, they are not good. And it turns out to be a 3-point game. And I think sometimes when you watch, your team like week in and week out, you just may not know like what is, what's coming down the pipe on the other end of it. And I think in the rivalry games, it's a little different because you keep an eye on the rivals, but in a game like that, I vividly remember that because I remember getting off the stream and Dre's like, do you think he was being like a little too optimistic about his team? And I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know, but he was right. He's just like, Nebraska essentially hasn't been blown out. They keep games close. Like it's messy, it's muddy, but they're gonna find a way. And I remember getting on stream like,
Well, they're not going
okay,
to find a way. They'll keep it
they'll
close.
find they'll find a way to keep it close. Find a way to keep it close.
Yeah,
That
they
was,
kept it close against Ohio. They kept it close against everybody.
which
Uh, but at some point, you have to make a determination. Um, yeah, we won't turn this into a Nebraska Scott Frost take. But had that been if that was Scott Frost's first season, I would have had a much different take on that performance because just to watch the football, it actually was fairly impressive. They didn't give up a second half first down to Michigan State. They completely dominated the second half. They lost in overtime. We saw the Michigan game. It's a 3-point game. They had a fourth quarter lead. They gave Ohio State a tough game, one score game, 90 seconds left. They're still within a score and they're driving and, they're right there. Oklahoma, the same thing. They played everybody tough, but again, I would have evaluated that differently, that being season 1, but not season 4, where this just continues.
Yeah, you'd like to have this be the year one, but it is not. So, I mean, I think Scott Frost in because he's kind of the golden boy and he's I don't think he's going anywhere, but
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I think they're going to be pretty content as long as they take a step and get a little better. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I think they need to get to a bowl game. They've got a lighter schedule. There's no Ohio State or Michigan State on the schedule this year. It looks more manageable for them to get 6-6 and get to a bowl game. When you brought up the conversation and your response to the conversation with Greg, I thought you were going the direction of when Corey was on before the Big Ten championship game and trying to figure out how does he think I was going to stay in this game.
That was, you know what? I remember vividly talking with Corey, and I remember, and it was. I think we had a great conversation, but I do remember that as well. And for me, it was just offense. I just didn't think that they would be able to really score points. I mean, and at that point, we got to see what Michigan's defense was, Aiden, Ojabo, Dax, and I just didn't see it, and I thought Iowa's defense was very opportunistic, that they will capitalize on the mistakes that you make, but as far as just taking the ball away and just being aggressive with it, yeah. But no, we had a good discussion on the channel, and it'll be exciting once the fall comes around to have some more with the other guys.
I've got to jump off, but we will have plenty of time also to discuss this one. And I'm sure you have addressed this at some point in conversation, even if it wasn't for the public. So keep this in your back pocket. What you think Michigan needs to do to catch Alabama and Georgia, and what you think the true difference is between those two programs in Michigan. I guess I don't put Ohio State in there. It's kind of difficult to slot them because Michigan just beat them, but they still seem like they're with Alabama and Georgia in a sense. So that's difficult to kind of figure out. But yeah, specifically Alabama and Georgia, and just what we saw between Georgia and Michigan, how much of that was valid. Of course, a lot of things can happen in one game that you almost would like to see. I wonder if they played 10 times, what that would look like. Would that just continue to repeat itself, or was that the best Georgia had, or could it get even worse? Or I tend to think that they were substantially better, decidedly better, but that Michigan maybe could start to figure things out if they played a series or on a different occasion, could have played a much different, better, more competitive game. But yeah,
That'll definitely be something that we can dive into, and maybe it'll be a conversation for maybe one of the days where we're looking for some evergreen content.
for
But
sure.
I think that'd be a really good conversation to have. So,
All right, Des, thanks for having me.
yep, no problem, Mark. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Perfect. All right. So I'm going to get to some questions here. But one thing I wanted to mention, and I think someone else had kind of talked about this topic a little bit, but essentially what I was, wanted to talk about is, can Michigan repeat the success that they had last year playing the same offensive style? Um, I think that's a good question just because of the success that they had offensively. I mean, I think even with, Cade not throwing a ton of touchdowns and things like that, I think he ended with 15 or 16 if I'm not mistaken. But um, I would categorize Michigan's offense as a massive success this past season. They came up big when they needed to. I mean, the season ended against Georgia, but as we saw in the national championship, Georgia put a vice on just about everybody that they played, and put one on Alabama the second time around as well. But I think for Michigan, it's going to have to look at least a little bit different because I think Hassan Haskins played such a huge role in the Michigan offense, whereas he was one who, he was the bell cow. He was the guy who was getting the heavy carries, and he just was so secure with the football. I still think I don't think he had a lost fumble in the entire season, and he had a lot of carries. And for as great of a running back I think Donovan Edwards is going to be, I still think he's very different than Hassan Haskins. Hassan is that just big bruiser. He's a guy you can give the ball to consistently, 20, 25 touches a game, and he's going to be a guy who gets stronger and stronger as the game goes on. I mean, I think a perfect example would be the Ohio State game where he had 5 touchdowns, I think 4 in the second half. That's a guy who just continues to get stronger and stronger throughout the game. So I think, Blake Corum has a lot of explosiveness to him, and I think that's going to continue this year. But I also think it's very different than the style that Hassan Haskins played in. And then also, too, I mean, Corum missed, I think, 2 or 3 games, towards the end of the season. I can remember the Maryland game. I think he started to come back in the, kind of get some touches and get some carries. But I just think it'll have to look a little bit different just because you don't have that same style of running back in Hassan Haskins. But I have no doubts that Corum and Edwards can definitely handle the workload in the backfield, and I think those guys will be fine. The JJ thing is just it's so tough because I'm not sure how JJ can unseat Cade as the starter. I mean, outside of a meltdown that Cade would have to have in the first 4 games, which based on everything we've seen from him, I just don't think that's coming. I don't think we're gonna have a meltdown from Cade McNamara. He has just been so consistent in the time that he's been, that we've seen him on the field. He has been consistent in his decision making. He makes mistakes, but every quarterback does. So it's not as if he is unique in that regard. Quarterbacks make mistakes, but I think the spring, JJ not being able to participate fully in spring, to me, and this is just me, who is, I'm sure Jim Harbaugh and no one in the athletic department is watching me, but I just think it took the ability for JJ to take the starting job off of the table because I just it's just going to be it's going to be difficult to have a quarterback change in mid-season. Now it's possible. We've seen it happen before. We've seen the Trevor Lawrence and Kelly Bryant, and we've seen those types of things happen. And Jalen Hurts and Tua, those guys were splitting time for a while, and then it went full time to Tua. But it's very difficult. And maybe it's not. Maybe I'm making it more difficult than it is. But the interesting part is with Trevor Lawrence. I think it was clear cut that he was better than Kelly Bryant, and maybe it is clear cut that JJ is the superior quarterback. I think it's clear he's a superior talent, but you need more than just talent to be able to be the starting quarterback and to unseat a quarterback who has what Cade had 15 starts last year, then started 2 or 3 games the season before. So you're talking a guy who's got 18 starts and is a Big Ten championship quarterback. I mean, whether we like it or not, I mean it he is that. So it would be difficult to unseat him, I think. But I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to do what's best for the team. So maybe that will be, the going with JJ, and maybe they will make that change. I would imagine they're probably going to split time similar to what we saw last year, and probably JJ getting more reps earlier in the season. Like he played in, I believe, multiple of the out of conference games, but we'll probably see him more in those first 3 or 4 games that we did in the prior year in the first 3 or 4 games. So we will see what happens. Let's get to some questions. Carl Dussault, thanks for the comment. Says, I see an 11-1 regular season realistically. Wouldn't be shocked by 10-2, 9-3 is reaching. And I'm assuming he's talking about Michigan. Let's Toast Media, thanks so much. Appreciate you tuning in. Says, salute to Mark. Appreciate it. Go Blue. Salute Des. Thank you. Let's see. Can Wisconsin be good this year, please? Well, I mean, they've got Graham Mertz coming back, if I'm not mistaken. That's always a good spot to start with a pretty darn good quarterback, but he's got to play a lot better. He's got to play a lot better this year than he did. He played better down the stretch last year, but he needs to play well all season. Let's Toast Media. Power ranking: Michigan, Ohio, Nebraska, sleeper Penn State, Michigan State. Whew. I would agree with some of that. I just have a hard time with Nebraska being, I mean, really over both of those, Penn State and Michigan State, which I don't think, I would probably go Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, Nebraska. It just, Scott Frost, he's gotta do it before I put any faith into him. And they picked up a transfer quarterback out of the portal. I would have to check and see who it is, but I'm not gonna do that right now. So they picked up a quarterback out of the transfer portal, but I still think that Michigan State, although they are losing Kenneth Walker Jr. Or Kenneth Walker, I still think with the experience that Peyton Thorne got last year, I know he made plenty of mistakes, but I'd like to think that experience that he had last year is going to be helpful, because he's going to have to take a little more of that workload of the offense on. I mean, you're not going to have a 1,600 yard rusher, if we're playing the odds on it, but I believe their receivers coming back, so he's got some weapons. He's just got to play better. But I just don't feel great about having Nebraska that high. But and I think the Michigan and Ohio State, I think that'll be close. I think the game will be, it's going to be a tough one, because for Michigan you're going to be on the road. CJ Stroud is now has a full season under his belt, which to me, and when we were on the channel talking about the Michigan Ohio State, will they be able to get over the hump? I thought that this past season would be a good opportunity, just because you had a quarterback who was not going to be a 2-3 year starter, a guy who hadn't even completed his first year of being a starting quarterback. That was going to be your best shot. And, Michigan did it in a convincing fashion. And now it's going to be just being able to build off of that and being able to go on the road in Columbus in a extremely hostile environment and and see if you can get a win on the road, because it'll be interesting, because and not that the rivalry needed any rejuvenating, but I feel like those fans in Columbus are going to be extremely hostile just because you lost the last year. So it's going to be a different level in a good way. Because you love to see just the game having just that much excitement about it, and even for Ohio State fans, I'm sure they hated losing last year, but just seeing the Michigan fans just rushing the field, and Jawan and Jim Harbaugh just in the midfield talking, and just getting that encouragement. It was a cool sight to see, and you saw it replayed again and again with different sports channels and all those different networks, things like that. So it was a really cool experience. It was cool to see, and we were right here as soon as that game wrapped up talking about it. So it was good. Right. Yep. Let's toast. Says Kate hasn't done anything to lose his job. Agree. With the weapons, JJ can take our offense to the next level. I also agree. Michigan has a number of first round picks. It's rare for any school to have a lot of first round picks except for Alabama. Yeah, I'd say Alabama, Georgia, LSU that year had multiple first rounders. I think they had, obviously, Joe Burrow was number one. I believe Jefferson went in the teens or 20s. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire was in that first round as well. I want to say they had a defender go in the first round too. But yeah, overall, it is a rare thing to have a guy get, or a team have that many first rounders. But I think Michigan definitely going to have some. Definitely going to have some. Ed Rogers, thanks for tuning in. He says, calm down, kids. Comparing the Ohio State offense to Michigan's offense is ludicrous. I mean, I think Ohio State's offense has the perception that they are elite. I think they do have some elite parts, especially last year with Olave and Garrett Wilson, Smith and Jigba, Trey Henderson, and obviously C.J. Stroud, who was at the Heisman ceremony. So yeah, I think they definitely have that perception. But to me, the Michigan offense definitely got better as the year went on. And I think overall Ohio State's did as well. But I think it's just different offenses. When you have a team that throws the ball a lot, Ryan Day really likes throwing the ball. And you have another team that's almost the opposite, that Michigan likes to run the football. That's been Jim Harbaugh's MO since he's been anywhere. San Diego State, Stanford, the 49ers, and at Michigan. He's been a run first quarter coach, and it's worked for him. So I think it'll be pretty similar. I think they will throw the ball more this year, I think. Just with the weapons I think that they have, I think they'll throw it more than they have in the past, and I'm sure Jim will be a little nervous about it, but I'm sure it'll work out. Let's see. Oh, and Ed, to stake his claim, he said Rutgers shut out Michigan for a half. We put 60 on them. That is also true. Ooh. Amazing Maths Tutoring worksheets and notes. Thank you for tuning in. Said Michigan only beat Ohio State because of three things: Hassan Haskins, Aiden Hutchinson, and 3 Snow. The Snow thing, like, we're gonna roll with that? I mean, now if you want to say Hassan Haskins and Aiden Hutchinson, cool, but the Snow, I don't. If I were Ohio State, I would not want that to be one of the reasons that I look at why they lost. And then also to me, no matter what the truth is, there's just some things you just should not say. Like, and also the flu thing. There's flu going around in the Ohio State locker room. Even if that's the case, that when you bring that up, you make it seem like you are making excuses, regardless of what the truth is. That's what it seems like. And for Ohio State fans, I mean, it just, nonetheless, I think Hassan Haskins was a big reason, but also too, I mean, I feel like the big fellas up front don't get enough credit, and that's just in football in general. But I think they did a phenomenal job of being extremely physical at the point of attack, moving the line of scrimmage, and opening up holes for Hassan Haskins. Hassan definitely did his part in the agreement, but I definitely think that the O line did a really good job of just establishing that physicality, and they never stopped. It just kept going, and they just really imposed their will. And I hate to be cliche, but that is truly what we saw in that game was an offensive line that just they were ready to dominate that game, and they were ready to take over. So. I'll give you 66% since we're math and tutoring. I'll give you number one, number two, number three. I think I'm gonna give you a check wrong on that. Are all Michigan fans here from Michigan? That is a question for our listeners. So yeah, let us know where you're tuning in from. I know we do have some that are on the channel pretty regularly that are not from Michigan or don't live in Michigan, I should say. I don't know where they're from, but Jason Williams says, Team Up North, y'all ready for Colorado State? Yeah, the non-conference, it doesn't look great for Michigan. If this were college basketball, their FPI or strength of schedule, they're getting they might get negatives for the out of conference. But on the plus side, ideally you'd like to get a lot of guys experience. You'd like to get a lot of guys on the field, and just be able to get a lot of guys touches. I mean, I think what you have in Blake Corum, what you have in Donovan Edwards, what you have in Ronnie Bell. Can we help the development of guys that you're going to need to step up later in the season? Even though I think he is an established guy in Cornelius Johnson, love to see him get quite a few targets early on in the season, because he's going to be one that you're going to need him to win some one-on-one matchups. I think teams are going to look at Ronnie Bell as the guy, and they are going to have a lot of attention on him, and you're going to need Cornelius to step up and play well. And the tough part is we were here last year kind of saying the same things, and I think he did take some steps as far as his development last year. I think he's going to need to take more for Michigan to get to where they ultimately want to be, but they they're the out of conference you got to take it as an opportunity. Just kind of is what it is. So you need to take, this is a schedule. So get as many guys touches as you can, get some experience, get the O-line to gel, get a lot of guys ready to play in those first couple of weeks. And I think Maryland is the first Big Ten, conference games. So really the first four are, not the toughest schedule, so I think we're gonna pencil in 4-0, and we're gonna go from there. So Ed Rogers says from Carlton, Flat Rock, Michigan, go Bucks. I'm actually from Taylor. Ferris is from Trenton. I am going to assume Trenton, Michigan. Not I think there's like a Trenton, New Jersey. Let's Toast Media. Mitten is in the building. Let's see. Oh, Memphis in the building. Thanks for tuning in, Jason from Memphis. All right. Blank name, thanks for tuning in. This is Nebraska's new recruiting video. Keeping it close. I mean, that's what they did. That's what they did. Oh man. That's pretty funny. Let's Toast says, there's no way Ohio's putting up 40 on us this year. Kill that noise. I don't know who that was directed at, but I mean, I would like to think that the defense is going to look a little bit different. You know, Dre and I talked about this either last week or the week before, but I think it'll look different. But I think the defense will be good. Um, this year, I think Morris. You're going to look at him to do a lot, and just I think overall guys on the back end are going to play better. I think they're going to need to step up, but I also think they're going to play better as well. Goodness gracious. And let's see. Blank name. This is talking about Georgia. That was the best that they could play. The fumbles bounced back perfectly to them. Let's see. Oh man, this is interesting. Let's see here. So Brett Shaw says OSU has played a cupcake schedule for 20 years. About time we figured out how to schedule. Love the 22 Michigan schedule. Let's see. Antoine, another regular on the show. Thanks for tuning in. Says the only thing that handcuffs to this Michigan team is Jim Harbaugh's careful nature and Cade's check down mentality and his inability to make deeper passes. Check down is good, but not when the deep ball is open. Gotcha. Corey, what's up, man? Corey is a friend of the show and also a friend of mine. But thanks for tuning in, man. Says Michigan plays Notre Dame 100 years in a row while OSU plays MAC schools. And they want to talk now. Oh, that's funny. And someone responded to Corey. Let's see what he said. Tunes, thanks for tuning in, says Michigan has rarely played Notre Dame historically and nowhere near 100 times, more like 35 or 40 in history. I think he took it a little literal, but that's okay. Washington State, Jackson, Michigan originally. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. Buckeye. Buckeye by birth, Wolverine by the grace of God. Hallelujah. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, the Michigan schedule is, not ideal, but I mean, I'm not going to make it seem like I'm looking up Ohio State's schedule just because I'm very curious. But, I mean, just from recent memory, I mean, Ohio State did have, this is a while ago, but you had the Texas, Ohio State. I think they did a home and home. They had one with Oklahoma. They played Oregon last year and they lost that game. I don't know if that's a home and home, which I think that's why I was looking up their schedule. So it does not look like that is a home and home. Or I wonder if the first year was the COVID year to where it's not a home and home, or the first one happened. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like people get the perception of out of conference schedules and thinking that they're all cupcakes. As an Alabama fan, I hear it all the time that they don't schedule anybody, but then when you roll through the last 10-15 years, they've had the number one team scheduled on the calendar, or the number one ranked team scheduled, which Florida State, I think that was 2015 maybe, where Florida State was the number one preseason team. They've had Virginia Tech, they've had Wisconsin, they've had, Duke and Louisville were a little rough. They've had scheduled Miami. They opened with Texas this year. So it just, sometimes people just get something in their minds that, you do or don't schedule somebody, and that's the truth. But at the end of the day too, what I look at is if you're undefeated, you're getting in. So we can make arguments that you should have a tougher schedule. You should have a tougher schedule. Yes, we can argue those things, but what you can't argue is a Power 5 team going undefeated, and they are getting in the playoff. So, it's a double-edged sword. You schedule better team. I look at Ohio State. You scheduled an Oregon team who is a really good team. I'm not here for the Oregon slander today. Oregon's a really good team, really good program, and you scheduled them, and you ended up losing that game out of conference. And then when you couple that with the Michigan loss, you're now not going to the playoff with no chance of getting in. Whereas if you beat Oregon and you still lose to Michigan, you maybe have a shot to get in the playoff. I mean, this year was a little different because you had Alabama and Georgia, but in a normal year, you might have a shot of getting in. So it's a double-edged sword. I think we're not going to get into playoff talk right now. We only got a couple minutes left, but I mean, at the end of the day, the goal is to get to the playoff. So I mean, I'm not going to say the easiest path to getting there because yeah, I like seeing the out of conference games of Alabama, Wisconsin. Alabama's about to play Texas. Ohio State and Oregon. Like I do like seeing those. So that part is really cool. So I'm definitely going to hope that that trend continues, and I do think it will, especially as the expansion of the playoff is inevitable. It's coming. So you're gonna have more wiggle room with losses because right now it's 2 losses and you're done. So as the playoff expands and you talk about 3 at-large bids, well, I'd rather be the Big Ten team that lost maybe 1 game out of conference and then lost 1 conference game, didn't make it to the conference championship, but I still have a heck of a resume and I played some really tough teams. Now when you talk about potentially, I don't know how many at-large bids are talking about, but 3 at-large bids. Well, I've got a pretty good shot of getting there. But we'll see what happens with that as far as the scheduling and things like that. And I think the other difficult part is that somehow these agreements happen so far in advance that I don't think that you should have a team scheduled 7, 8 years out. Like I think that's crazy. To me, it should be like we should be looking for 2023 opponents right now. Like that's to me that's how it should work because you end up scheduling a team 8 years out. You have no idea if that team's going to be good or even worth you scheduling them. So what's the great Ohio State's good now. Well, what if in 5 years they have some turnover and things aren't going that well? Well, you scheduled them thinking that you were going to get a boost, and now they're struggling. So I just the scheduling I think needs some tweaking for sure. But we'll see what happens, and I'm not even sure how I even get to that point, but here we are. It might be tough to get in if you have 1 loss and no conference championship. I think it'd be tough, but I think we've seen it happen before with, we saw Georgia just make it this past season. Alabama's done it before. So it's possible. I think Notre Dame in the year that they were in the ACC, they had the loss to Clemson in the ACC championship game. It just to me, it's tough, but it's definitely doable. And Antoine kind of talking about the scheduling. It only benefits you if you beat the harder non-conference scheduled opponent, and you need the extra clout. I agree, because obviously if you lose it, then it really doesn't. I mean, that's the thing. Like I said, let's stick with Ohio State just because we're talking about them. But if they lose to Oregon and win and run the table, then it's fine. They look great, and it probably helps Oregon's schedule a little or strength of schedule a little bit too. So, AJ says you could tell Michigan has a mental edge on Ohio State. Michigan is in Ohio State's head. The culture is not the same under Ryan Day as it was under Urban Meyer. I'm not sure I would. I'm not sure I would say that. I think it's probably a bit of recency bias because I think if Ohio State wins this year, I don't think anyone's has that same criticism. I'm sorry, if Ohio State won the most recent game, I think people would probably not have that outlook on it. So I think part of it is just kind of the recency bias, which is normal to have. So I don't know. I don't know. But Ryan Day did say he wanted to hang 100 on him, and he did not hang 100. Lie detector tests said that was a lie. Antoine says Michigan's schedule is usually hard. I have no problem with Michigan eating some cupcakes every once in a while. Why not? Everybody else does too. I'm with you. I'm with you. Let's see. Old friends call it Taylor. And yes. It was Taylor Tucky. That is definitely it. All right, but I think that is it for me, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Definitely appreciate it. We will be here next week from 5:30 to 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. So feel free to tune in. Also, you can find me on Twitter at the All Go Podcast. So yeah, feel free to tweet me. I'm usually on pretty regularly. So no, but thank you everybody. We definitely appreciate it. I can't thank you guys enough for tuning in every week. Like I said, Antoine, Let's Toast Media, Blank Name, Corey, you guys are tuning in all the time, so definitely appreciate it. Ferris as well. But thank you guys so much. I always want to try to show my appreciation. So thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I am going to cook some dinner and eat. So thanks, guys. Have a good one.